Her name was Mary Lee. 19 years old. One suitcase. A letter from her doctor that she probably didn't need to read because she already knew what it said. She asked the nurse at the front desk one question when she arrived. Could she see the hills from her window? Nobody wrote down the answer. Nobody thought it mattered. She was patient 4,112. She had 6 months, she lasted 4. She was not the last person to die at Waverly Hills that week. She wasn't even close. But somewhere in this building, in one of these rooms, behind one of these windows, a 19-year-old girl spent her last 4 months watching hills she'd asked to see. And then she left through a tunnel in the ground so the other patients wouldn't have to watch her go. In 1910, they built a tuberculosis hospital on a hill outside Louisville, Kentucky. The reasoning was simple. Fresh air, elevation, distance from the city. Doctors at the time genuinely believed this gave patients a fighting chance against a disease that was killing 1 in 7 Americans, with no reliable treatment and no end in sight. They were wrong. Not about the fresh air. That part was fine. They were wrong about the fighting chance. Tuberculosis moves through breath, through time, through a building full of infected people being cared for by healthy ones who go home each night and come back each morning. The hill didn't matter. The elevation didn't matter. What mattered was that hundreds of dying people were in the same place at the same time, with nowhere else to go. By the late 1920s, the deaths are happening faster than they can manage. Not manage medically, manage psychologically. Because the patients know, they always know, they see the empty beds, they read the faces of the staff, they hear things at night that nobody explains in the morning. And every time a body gets carried past the windows, which at peak is happening multiple times a week, something in the surviving patients breaks a little more. Stops eating, stops trying. Death, it turns out, is contagious in ways that have nothing to do with bacteria. So in 1926, they build the tunnel. 535 feet of concrete running from the basement straight down the hill to the road below. The official story is that it's a supply route. Food, medicine, equipment. And that's true. It is used for that. But the real reason is simpler and harder to say out loud. They need a way to move the bodies out without the living watching them go. No more carrying the dead past windows. No more processions through the main hall. The dead go underground now, down the tunnel, in the dark, out to the road, gone, while upstairs the living eat breakfast and look at the hills and pretend not to be counting. The staff start calling it the body chute. Nobody stops them. For 30 years, the dead of Waverly Hills leave through that tunnel. Thousands of them, in the dark, one after another. The living above them trying not to think about the math. The tunnel is still there. You can walk it today. In 2014, a researcher spent 6 hours alone inside it with audio recording equipment. At the 4-hour mark, 300 feet from either end, entrance sealed, completely alone, his recording picks up a sound. 3 audio engineers listen to it independently. None of them know where it was recorded or what they're supposed to be hearing. All 3 say the same thing. Human voice, 1 word, 4 times. Wait. 5th floor, room 502, 1928. A nurse is found dead. She hanged herself from the light fixture in the center of the ceiling. 29 years old, pregnant. The father, according to the private correspondence of people who worked there, was almost certainly the head physician. Nobody was ever questioned about this. The official inquiry lasted 3 days. Suicide, case closed. The records have gaps that don't feel like accidents. 1932. 4 years later, different nurse, same room. She jumps from the window. No note, no warning signs. No explanation for why she chose that room, specifically. There were other windows on that floor, other rooms with identical views. She had no connection to room 502. No documented reason to be there. She chose it anyway. In every serious investigation of Waverly Hills since the building closed, teams that have never spoken to each other, working different decades, using different equipment, report the same thing about room 502. A feeling of being held. Not afraid, not confused, physically held. One investigator describes standing at the door of room 502 with her hand on the handle, ready to leave, the handle turning, and then her arm, simply, stopping. Not frozen, not paralyzed, just done. Like a part of her had decided, quietly and without asking permission, that she wasn't going anywhere. She stood there for 4 minutes before she could move again. She doesn't remember what she was thinking during those 4 minutes. She remembers that it didn't feel wrong. That's what she can't explain. It didn't feel wrong at all. 14 investigators, no shared notes, no reason to coordinate. One of them, someone who has been doing this work for 20 years and does not use words carelessly, describes it like this. It wasn't passive, whatever is in that room. It noticed me. The thermal footage from 2006 gets cited most often. Research team, 3rd floor, rooms sealed and confirmed empty before the investigation starts. Thermal cameras pick up human-shaped heat signatures moving through those rooms. The equipment manufacturer reviews the footage personally and confirms the cameras were working correctly. No explanation then. None since. But the basement kitchen sightings are the ones that stay with me, because of how consistent they are across people who had no way of comparing notes. Multiple teams, different years, no contact between them. All of them report a boy, 6 to 8 years old, dark clothing, something in his left hand, standing in the same spot in the kitchen. Watching, then gone. No child died in that kitchen. No historical record explains it. The sightings keep happening. And then there is the recording from the 4th floor. A room empty since 1961. 3 engineers verify the audio separately without context. A woman's voice, 7 words. I have to go. I can't stay. 60 years in that room and she still hasn't left. A journalist spends one night in Waverly Hills in 2009. She goes in with a photographer, both professionals. Neither of them easily rattled. At 2 a.m., the photographer walks out. No explanation. Doesn't come back. Quits his job the following week. Hasn't spoken about that night in 17 years. She stays until dawn. Her article is perfectly normal, factual, historical. She doesn't mention a single thing about her own experience. 6 months later, someone asks her directly what happened that night. She's quiet for a moment. Then she says, "By 3 a.m., I'd stopped being scared of the building. I'd started being scared of my own thoughts. Because they felt like mine. Completely normal, completely mine. And I couldn't tell anymore if they were." She hasn't gone back. 3 other visitors returned without authorization after their first visit. One was found inside 72 hours later, physically fine. No memory of where he'd been or what he'd done. When asked why he came back, he said, "I felt like I hadn't finished. Waverly Hills closed in 1961. A couple bought it in 2001. They're still renovating. 20 years. Contractors who leave mid-job. Workers who don't come back after 1 shift. The building moves at whatever pace it decides to allow. They run tours now, overnight stays. They're open about what people report experiencing inside. They're also open about one other thing. In over 20 years of owning this building, neither of them has ever spent a full night there alone. They don't explain why. They don't need to. 8,000 people. That's the number that left through the tunnel, in the dark, down 535 feet of concrete, while the ones still living tried not to count. Mary Lee came here at 19 with a suitcase and a question about the view. Patient 4112. 4 months. Nobody wrote down whether she got the window she asked for. Nobody wrote down a lot of things at Waverly Hills. That's the part that stays with me. Not the thermal footage, not the voice in the tunnel, not room 502. The things nobody wrote down. Some doors once opened don't close from the outside.